everyone. My name is Brad Laporte. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Morphisec, and with me today, I have Joe Simone, the Security Sales Engineer. And today we're going to be going over our monthly demo, and today's topic is a very important one, adaptive recovery. So here, we're going to be talking about this revolutionary approach, our new way that we've gone about it. And really, in this, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about real-time ransomware recovery. We'll see how data recovery intercepts ransomware encryption keys in real time. We're going to be enabling immediate restoration of those encrypted files without relying on backups or traditional backups. And then we're going to be talking about forensic preservation made easy and continuously securing that forensic data and such security events that basically the way that attackers are being traced and really tamper-proof storage to ensure rapid investigations and compliance. And then how ultimately adaptive recovery helps with all of this. And then we'll get into some questions and answers at the end. And as part of this, feel free to add any questions into the Zoom chat and we'll progress through the session. And really the key point is to identify, why ransomware and why are we talking about this today? And it comes down to the fact that there is a ransomware epidemic and it's not going away. Attackers are now using AI-driven campaigns. They're using automation more than ever. We have ransomware as a service, and this is basically a 10 trillion with a T type criminal empire that's taking over the world. Reactive security is failing, and you need to have a defense in depth approach and being able to fortify your other endpoint security solutions and having something that's going to watch over your shoulder and provide that additional component to make it more and more difficult for threat actors and really improving your mean time to detect and your mean time to respond overall. And really offsetting and taking that load off overwhelmed security teams. Alert fatigue, false positives, all of these things are a real burden on our resources. And we have more limited resources and more tighter cost constraints than we've ever had before. And then vulnerabilities are now at its peak. We're now seeing 0 days and even -1 day exploits where the amount of time that it takes for an issue to really present itself and be exploited in the wild is getting out there before defenders are even aware that it even exists. And then the cost of ransomware is just going even further. So now we're seeing $1.85 million per incident, and the financial losses are going out, and it's more surgical than ever. And how we take this approach is really through this advanced deception approach we call automated moving target defense. And with this, we're using decoys and we're using different advanced deception techniques to have really, if you think of it like conceptually, this ever-changing maze, which is ever-changing our underlying attack surface. And we're constantly changing the environment. So it really just makes it incredibly difficult for threat actors to actually really implement and infiltrate and move laterally throughout the environment because it's become such a complex ecosystem that it just makes it really difficult for them to go through and actually do reconnaissance to infiltrate and move laterally throughout that environment. And the way that we've set up our assurance suite is really 4 major components. And really it's adaptive exposure management, infiltration protection, and then impact protection and adaptive recovery. And what we're going to talk about today is that adaptive recovery component. And with really with this, the adaptive exposure management is giving us visibility across our vulnerabilities and prioritization around that, our security controls, our overall misconfigurations, our software inventory and high-risk software, and then really analyzing that risk and looking across the legacy support, all the end-of-life items. Now with Windows 10 being end of life next week. This is becoming more and more prevalent, as well as all the other legacy systems that not every organization has basically upgraded to. And then other key components as we continue to evolve that component of our suite. And then we have infiltration protection that's protecting at the earliest stages. This is our preemptive protection capabilities. We're looking across runtime, privilege escalation, credential theft, hacking tools, and exfiltration, and then protecting across all those different components. And then the next wave is impact protection, where we're looking at tamper protection, at data encryption and wiping protection. And then last but not least, we have the adaptive recovery component, where really in here we're looking across both a forensic recovery and data recovery. And from a real-time operation, the forensic recovery is continuously backing up and looking at that forensic data, looking at the logs and execution traces, and being able to prevent that tampering and deletion. And for data recovery, we're capturing those encryption keys as the ransomware executes. And then from a tamper-proof perspective, we're actually looking at the artifacts, the immutable encrypted format, and preventing the authorized modification while ensuring that those captured keys are securely stored. From an attack insight perspective, we're preserving the visibility into attacker behavior and initial access, as well as the lateral movement, as I said, but we're also recovering encrypted files without requiring any kind of brute force. So, really from there, we're able to automate and we're able to automatically protect the forensic data with zero manual effort. We're doing it programmatically in the background, and then we're able to operate transparently without any user interaction. And then last but not least, we're helping achieve really compliance alignment. So we have alignment across several MITRE attack techniques that basically are required by compliance, and then specifically that require you to have controls with overall incident detection, as well as preventing those log tampering, and then meeting basically data restoration requirements. So a lot of good stuff, a lot of amazing elements. And Joe, I'd love to just basically dive into this and really take a look at what we have to offer.
Awesome. Great. Let me share my screen and we can get into the fun stuff. Not that PowerPoint's not fun, but running ransomware is more fun.
All right.
Hopefully you guys can see my screen.
Yep, looking good.
Awesome. So today, I'm going to show you how we can use Morphisec's adaptive recovery to recover from an encryption event by ransomware. What I'm going to use is a sample of ransomware of Babook that I downloaded off of VirusTotal. My disclaimer here is don't try this at home. This is an actual ransomware that will destroy your PC and the data that's on it, and maybe more. I'm running this in an isolated environment. To be fully transparent, I have disabled Defender protections because this is a known sample. It would flag on that. But this is not unlike how in a real scenario, real attackers would operate. I'm a nerd and I love digging through IR reports. And one of the things I see over and over is attackers are not using known samples. They are creating custom variants of ransomware for every target. So there is no signature to match by an EDR, or they're even disabling the EDR using techniques like putting that machine into safe mode, which kind of really limits and hamstrings a lot of the EDR functionality. But for today, while it is a known sample, uh, as you can see, I'm going to take a look at some of the file hashes. I'm going to extract this, and we can take a look at it. All right, got to put in the super secret password. All right, so we have our file here. You can see here, this is actually the hash of the file. I just want to, make sure that everybody thinks, we're using real ransomware here. We can get the file hash, and we can take this file hash and we can compare it to samples that are in virus total or even malware bazaar with that same hash and see that it is bad book. So this is actual ransomware, right? And like Brad was saying, ransomware is something all of our customers are concerned with. The threat actors that are out there are always advancing their techniques. No single solution is 100%. And that's why really having a defense in depth or having layers of protection is really important. At Morphisec, we take a really preventative first approach, right? So when something gets to us, we stop it. We prevent it from becoming a problem. When it comes to ransomware encryption, being executed on a computer, we always look to stop it as early in the process as we possibly can through a number of different methods. One of those methods is with the use of decoy files. These decoy files are small hidden files that we place strategically throughout the operating system. When a ransomware encryption process is started, as soon as it touches one of our decoy files, we stop it, we kill it. Now, the interesting thing here is how the files are created and how they're designed. They're designed in such a way is that when they are created, the likelihood that a ransomware encrypting our decoy files very early on in that process, before it encrypts other files, is very high. But there may be a handful of files that are legitimate files that are encrypted before we actually kill that process, which is why we have the ability to capture those encryption keys and use that to decrypt the handful of files that were actually encrypted. For this demo, I've got some really important files here. You can see it's in a folder that's been placed kind of strategically, specifically so it does get encrypted, because if we didn't show you something being encrypted, it's not a very fun demo. But if this was going to say this is a real life scenario, you would probably never see this. But I do remember that I've worked on the help desk, and I have seen some things that users do. And instead, I'm going to say you're very likely you would never see this scenario in the real world. So again, don't try this at home. I do need to rename this sample so it is executable. Let's see. And then we get to run it. Oops, did I screw that up? Well, maybe if I did it right. Let's see what I do. Doing things live sometimes. All right, there we go. So you're going to see here, Windows knows that I'm doing something bad. It's trying to alert me, says, hey, don't do this. But it's not actually stopping me from doing anything. And this is one of the things I love about my job is I get to let the intrusive thoughts win, and I get to click on the things that I really shouldn't click on. So you'll see here, Windows Defender popped up. It didn't actually stop anything. You can see the files over here being encrypted. But you can see here, Morphisec popped up and said, hey, we killed this for you. We saw it running. It's dead. So now we have these encrypted files. We can't actually open them anymore. They're all junk, basically. There's the ransomware note, how to restore the files. So if you really want to pay the Bitcoin to have your files recovered, or you can use Morphisec and we can decrypt those files. So one of the first things we need to do that is we need to grab the decryption key or the encryption key that we captured during the encryption process. And that's going to be right here. One of the things that's worth noting is, I know Brad mentioned it, is we do keep a immutable copy of the system logs, so that if these are deleted or removed from the system when the attackers are going in and covering up their tracks, we can actually go back and help you recover those as well. From an IR forensics perspective, this is really important. But the encryption key is actually captured in this key capture file. We're going to copy that, and we're going to go into where we have our decryptor file. And we're just going to place it here right next to it. And we're going to run it. And it's going to go through. And we can see our files being restored. We can open them up again. And we can basically get back to normal. No other damage has been done to the system. All of our files have been restored that were encrypted, which makes it really fast, really easy. Didn't have to go to backups, didn't have to go to tape. So yeah, very easy
Amazing.
way of restoring those files on the desktop. But let's take a look at the console, maybe see what we can see in there, and we will go from there. So this is the Morphisec console, best console you're going to see all day. The um, interesting things here is we have our exposure management components, so helping you harden the attack surface. We also have our incidents. Again, I go back to like thinking about how I love to read through the incident logs because I'm a nerd. It's very interesting to me to see the repeatable processes that almost all of the attackers kind of go through, and it's very structured workflow almost in that they like to, establish persistence. They go in, they install something like AnyDesk, and they'll use that for their remote access, their persistence. The next things they'll probably do is do network scanning. So they may use something like advanced IP scanner, and we can actually go in when we see IP scanner run, it's probably going to be malicious, so we're just going to block it. So in this case, we have an entire event around stopping advanced IP scanner, um, which an attacker would normally use to enumerate through the network, find other hosts they could use to move laterally into. We just stop this process and help them not achieve their goals. But we also look for things like data exfiltration. So looking at um, the use of rclone. So in this case, we've stopped this exfiltration attempt. The attacker came in. You can see the full file path of how they executed this specific version of rclone. This was running. They tried to exfiltrate data. We stopped it. We prevented it from running. No data was lost, which I think is a really important differentiator. We don't want to lose customer data. In certain instances, like healthcare, that can be very damaging if they lose things like patient records or other regulated industries. So we never want to lose customer data or have it leave the where it should be. And so we try to stop it again as early on in the process as possible. And this is all, you know, looking at the entire life cycle of ransomware actors and those really advanced threat actors. You want to have multiple places that you're stopping their activities in that kind of kill chain or that life cycle. And so Morphisec does that. We stop the advanced IP scanner network enumeration. We stop the rclone. And then before they even got to the encryption phase, we stop the encryption phase. And you can see that up here. You'll see this is the actual event that we just ran. You see the file name here. You can see that we stopped it because of ransomware mitigation. Ransomware mitigation means that it tripped on one of our decoy files, and we killed that process because nothing should ever be touching those decoy files. That's legitimate. So one nice thing about Morphisec is we also collect a lot of really interesting information when we do see incidents. We see, kind of take almost a mini memory dump and bring that back into the console and give you some additional information that you may not always get out of typical EDR processes or typical EDR logs, or even Windows logs for that matter. The thing that we're kind of looking at here is the decoy files, and we can actually go in and see the specific decoy files that this ransomware touched that caused us to recognize it was there and kill it. So yeah, it's a very effective method for stopping ransomware that's going to execute on a machine and stopping those encryption phases, and then being able to go back in and recover those files that may have been encrypted without actually having to go to tape backup and then wipe the device or whatever. So that about sums everything up there. Brad, I'm going to send it back over to you.
Mhm.
Hopefully.
Yeah, as you can see, this is absolutely critical to have in your organization. Um, Outstanding demo. This is one of my favorite features and solutions within the Morphisec suite. And I mean, just having been on the other side of the fence, it's absolutely necessary. I mean, you can imagine the time savings, the cost. I mean, how do you put a price on this? You just can't. So I see there was a couple of questions that came in while we were on the session here. Just give me a second to take a look at this. And we have a couple minutes left, so if anyone else has some others, feel free to add it into the Zoom
Please do.
chat. All right. If I'm reading this correctly, Joe, first in the shoot, what type of forensic data does adaptive recovery preserve, and how is that protected? Covered a
That's a
little bit
great
on that,
question.
but
Yeah. So adaptive recovery is always and continuously capturing that critical kind of forensic data, those event logs, the security logs, things like attack traces, the execution paths, kind of that what we saw when we kind of go through and you can see how it executed there. And that data is all stored in encrypted storage to make sure that we always have that kind of integrity there, which also helps make it compliant with things like regulations or regulatory compliance requirements. And it makes it ready to pull into an IR investigation when you do have those events. So, yeah, basically, we can have immutable copies of this event data that we need to keep for different purposes. But yeah, I hope that answered your question. Great question.
yeah, that's a really good one. I'm going to combine two into one here. What impact does this have on system performance, and how does this integrate with existing security tools? That's another good one.
Yeah, it is. Wow. Okay. So one, Morphisec in general is a super lightweight agent. It doesn't really have any impact on the host machines that it's working on. The typically runs less than 1% of CPU. It's really designed to operate kind of silently in the background without having that huge impact on those things like I/O or memory or even the CPUs again. It does integrate seamlessly with the other endpoint detection and response tools. And it kind of also gives you that interesting kind of view into MITRE ATT&CK because we can align along those lines as well. The so it's really about having entire integration. We have an API that is, I would say you can do everything you do in the console, you can do with the API, so you can integrate into just about any tool that's out there. So,
Mhm. Yep, absolutely. And we have a pretty vast portfolio of uh, partnerships and vendors that we work with.
mhm.
The next one up is can Morphisec handle advanced ransomware techniques, like in-memory attacks, fileless attacks, I think is what they were talking about.
Mm.
Um, Anything you want to add some color to on that, and how Morphisec goes about it?
Yeah, great question too. Yeah, I mean, those are really the attacks that we see a lot of, right? Those are the ones that are getting past the EDRs, right? And adaptive recovery is really kind of purpose built for uh, fighting or combating those modern ransomware tactics, right? And that includes those fileless, those in-memory attacks. It does work alongside our infiltration protection as well as the impact protection, which kind of really helps to neutralize those threats that happen in memory before they can encrypt files or even delete those forensic evidence. So being able to have that recovery piece is a really amazing piece. So great questions, man. We're gonna
Yeah,
have fun today.
keep them coming, folks. A couple more. We have how does adaptive recovery restore encrypted files without relying on backups or paying the ransom? So you walk through that in the demo, but how, give a little insight into like the background.
Yeah. So basically, when Morphisec sees encryption taking place or we see an encryption event that we're stopping, we're going to go in and we're going to intercept that ransomware encryption key in real time during that attack. And this really allows the system to be instantly restored. So taking those encrypted files, unencrypting them, decrypting them from those clean tamper-proof caches without needing backups or negotiating with the attackers to pay that Bitcoin because Bitcoin's worth, it's a lot of money.
Mhm. Yeah, anytime that someone wants to share their Bitcoin wallet with
Yeah.
me, feel free to send it my way. So, what happens if attackers attempt to tamper with or delete forensic data during an active attack?
Man, those questions. Um, you know, so since Morphisec adaptive recovery is kind of storing all that forensic data, the logs, the attacker activity, in a kind of tamper-proof. It's not kind of. It is a tamper-proof, immutable format. It really kind of ensures that even if the attackers try to delete it or modify that system evidence, cover their tracks, the forensic data is going to remain intact. It's going to be there and it's going to be secure for that post-incident analysis and for that compliance reporting if you do need it. Cool.
All right. And
Okay,
then
man.
last but not least, there's one more. I think we have
All
enough
right.
time for one more. Um, why is it important to preserve the forensic data during a ransomware attack? Kind of a compliance angle here.
You know, preserving that forensic data, it really makes sure that you can conduct things like root cause analysis, as well as complying with regulatory needs, right, or regulatory compliance needs. And then also giving you that evidence of like how it actually happened is going to help you prevent future attacks as well, because you can go back and kind of fix the holes that were there or figure out how they got in and figure out what patching needs to occur or what hardening you can do on the system. I think that's a great place to look at adaptive exposure management component from Morphisec. Because without that data, if you don't have it, your organization's going to risk being reinfected, facing fines for failing to meet compliance standards, GDPR or HIPAA. Those get steep pretty quick too. You're getting a lot of Bitcoin.
That's a lot. So we're just at time. So thank you all for the session. If you want to learn more, please go to morphisec.com, reach out for a more detailed one-on-one demo, and happy to carry on the conversation. But tune in next month for another monthly demo. Thank you,
Sounds good.
Joe.
Thanks,
Appreciate your
Brad. It was
time.
fun. Have a good day.
Thank you all for your great questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.